court is in recess but will resume any moment in Utah for the last day of the preliminary hearing in the Charlie Kirk murder case to determine if the case will indeed go to trial. But now we know that we won't even get that answer until at least September, which will mark nearly a year since Charlie was shot and killed while speaking at Utah Valley University. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany. And also joining us today, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, Rebecca Heinrichs, Hudson Institute senior fellow, and Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary and Fox News contributor. Now, the judge has scheduled another round of oral arguments for September 1st. It took us 10 months to even get this far, after a handful of previous hearings over defense counsel's attempts to limit media access and remove the prosecution team. Today, defense counsel is calling its last witness, and the court is set to see more surveillance footage of Tyler Robinson on campus the day of the shooting. Yesterday, we heard pre-recorded testimony from Robinson's former roommate and lover, Lance Twiggs. He told prosecutors that Robinson confessed several times after the shooting. First, in a note that he allegedly left under Twiggs' keyboard, and then later over a text exchange. Watch.
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. I started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it, and then kept going around and just doing stuff, I think, to keep himself busy or distracted or something.
Either. Well, after the shooting, Twiggs allegedly received a message from Robinson telling him to look under his keyboard. And then there, according to prosecutors, he then found a note in which Robinson confessed to the killing. So in one text, Twiggs asks, quote, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson allegedly wrote back, "I am. I'm sorry." While Twiggs' testimony was playing, Robinson appeared to fidget when his former roommate revealed that Robinson started engraving bullets about a month before the shooting. Law enforcement says that investigators found several engraved bullets when they recovered what they believe was the murder weapon. The Kirk family has been in court every day during this hearing, but will now have to wait at least 7 more weeks before learning if there will even be a trial. Kayleigh, Donald Trump Jr. has come on Fox News a handful of times. He has been there in court, and he's been quite clear, I think more than anyone, in summing up the volume and the specificity of the evidence, as well as the diversity of such, from bullet analytics, DNA, so much, let alone notes and texts and all the things from the defendant, circumstantial, biological evidence, physical, and so much more, in saying that it's cut and dried. It is cut and dried, and yet here we are 10 months later and now having to wait an even longer period of time to even get the plea to be entered.
Yeah, I last night had just parked in a parking lot and I looked down, I see an email from our producer, no decision until September. And I said, this cannot be right. This has to be a wrong email. And I opened it and no, indeed, it was right. No decision until September. This is mind-blowing. Judge Tony Graff yesterday cited Article 1, Section 28 of the Utah Constitution, and that allows Erica Kirk and the family to be treated with respect, with dignity, to be free from harassment, to be informed and present at the trial. But I would love for him to cite Utah Code 773872. Do you know what that gives Erica Kirk and her family? The right to a speedy disposition of the charges free from unwarranted delay caused by or at the behest of the defendant. Where's Judge Tony Graff's affinity for that statute? Because you are not giving that to Erica Kirk. You are not giving that to that family. Yes, the defendant has Sixth Amendment rights to a speedy trial, a litany of other rights. But the fact that this is not going to be decided until September, there's no decision on probable cause. Probable cause is such a low bar. And to your point, there's ballistic evidence. There's DNA evidence. There's a texted conviction. There's the roommate saying he confessed to me. There is a litany of evidence, and she doesn't get a probable cause decision until September, nearly a year after Charlie was killed. You can't make a decision on the plea. Tyler Robinson, we're not even going to get his plea until a year from when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. We're not going to know if this goes to trial until a year from when Charlie was assassinated. This is inexcusable. I am angry about it. On average in this country, a defendant enters a plea 24 to 48 hours after an arrest. Tyler Robinson has been arrested for nearly a year. And the fact that we will not know this until a year, Utah, you might as well rip up your statue about the speedy disposition for the victim, because Erica Kirk is being denied that. And I'm quite angry about it.
I feel it's particularly surprising, Lisa, because this judge was a prior prosecutor. While he's relatively new at the judicial bench, he was a prosecutor for over 20 years. So I would think he would understand sort of the clear lengths to which he is appeasing clearly defense counsel and seeming like he's unfairly prejudicing by far the families of the victim.
Well, yeah, I share Kaylee's frustration, and I'm sure Erica Kirk is very frustrated, as well as Charlie Kirk's family, to have to just continue suffering the loss of Charlie. I will say it speaks to Erica's character, which it was reported that she handed someone a tissue despite going through great pain herself here. It's very clear that there's enough evidence to reach the probable cause threshold that this will ultimately go to trial. I have questions about Twiggs. I mean, clearly he's not being charged with anything. There's no evidence of wrongdoing on his behalf. But just because something is not legally wrong doesn't mean that you should escape scrutiny, in the sense of, did you really... You have someone engraving things on bullet casings a month before the murder. Did that really not raise additional questions? And then also, why didn't you turn in Tyler Robinson immediately upon Tyler Robinson's confession? So I just have questions about that as well. He has limited use immunity right now in this, the preliminary hearing as well. So, he's protected from some of those things. But just have questions about him and praying for Erica Kirk and the Kirk family.
Indeed. And to be clear, what he's protected from are those statements specifically. So there could be potential charges for, we know that Robinson is facing 2 counts of obstruction too, including when he asked
it has
Twiggs
to be proven outside of his testimony.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So that's, for anyone watching, the immunity is simply for those statements that we watched yesterday in court by recording. Ari, what do you think about this? It seems like the whole nation is watching with bated breath, and certainly to help dispel a lot of those, frankly, insidious conspiracy theories that have been festering on the internet and online. Again, when you see that evidence, it tends to evaporate all of that.
Obviously, there's a huge hungering across this country, particularly in conservative circles, for justice for Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk's family. I mean, we all watched it. And so many people learned so much more about Charlie and his brilliance because of this, sadly. I'm not a lawyer, and so I've had a long-standing practice of I'm not on the jury. I haven't watched every iota of the details, et cetera. So I try not to comment on the day-to-day movements of trials. But I will say this, and this is what scares me. There is a left-wing militia out there. In part, it's organized. In part, it's organized when you look at Antifa. In other parts, and this is what's even more scary, it's not organized like a militia on the ground. It's organized through hatred. And it comes out in violence. It's the shooting of Charlie Kirk. It's the shooting of Donald Trump at the golf course. That was a politically motivated shooting. The attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. Now we hear about the 8 indictments of people who were trying to get to that White House event just a month ago, to kill the attendees at a White House event. It is a violence epidemic that the left has not done its part to shut down. Just like they don't try to shut down the socialist ideology, they don't try to shut down the violent left-wing problem we have in this country. And don't be fooled. Just because it is not an organized on-paper militia doesn't mean that hate doesn't unite people in violence. We see that on the left.
You're so right. Rebecca, something that struck me about the statements by Twiggs, and of course all of this is allegedly, was the callousness, the amateur quality, the sort of obliviousness demonstrated in the interactions and in the text, how cavalier human life was approached. I didn't know, and now I regret it, and not knowing that he had children. It's like there is somehow a lack of humanity that I argue has been fomented online, that we see in dialogue, and then the frightening thing is if it allegedly amounts to actual physical violence.
Right. Well, it's monstrous. I mean, you see this sort of disregard for human life, and then you compare that too with how premeditated this seems to have been, with the sketchings on the bullets and everything, all that evidence that we're learning about too. The other thing, Kaylee, I agree with you how frustrating this is, the delay in time to even get to this point. I think of something that Andy McCarthy said once about court cases today. Now in the era of social media, information hates a vacuum, and that's why you have these conspiracy theories that are blooming and creating even more agony for Erica Kirk. And I was really moved by that information too, is about Erica Kirk providing the tissue to somebody else crying in the courtroom. She didn't know which side of the court case that this woman who was grieving and crying, moved by the information, even was. And yet Erica Kirk is moved with sympathy to these other people who are suffering too. And so I just keep thinking about her agony and how she continues to try to carry on Charlie's legacy and help her children move on while this court case continues to inexplicably drag on.
Although I worry as we talk about the toxicity in America and this left-wing militia that Ari laid out, how difficult will it be to find an impartial jury, particularly with the publicness of this case as well, with a lot of people with poisonous minds in the way that they view Charlie Kirk and this case. So I do worry about that.
Yeah. And remember, the standard is not whether or not you've heard of the case. The standard is whether you can be impartial. And that's what the voir dire process is for. And I always come back to the Boston Marathon very public trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev after the Boston Marathon bombing, when the judge there, in denying the motion to change venue, was like, this is a city of 9 million people. We're going to find a juror just fine. We're going to find an impaneled jury just fine. And I loved that, because I loved the confidence and essentially saying, no, it's going to stay right here, and we will find 9 or 12 impartial juries. I forget how much it is in Utah, which
you can't even get a jury until you get to trial.
Yeah.
And this is the crazy part. And Emily, as you're talking, you just reminded me, the defense asked to delay this preliminary hearing. They were not granted that delay. But they kind of were, because we're not even getting a decision until September to go to a trial. They need to do better. This is outrageous. A jury? Great. Well, let's get to trial, right?
Also, if he releases his opinion that day, like he did yesterday, so remember, he took arguments yesterday in addition to receiving their briefs beforehand, and then read his already articulated and drafted decision. So is this going to be just theater then? On September 1st, when he then receives oral arguments again, will he already have his decision rendered just like he did yesterday after wasting everyone's time? So then what's the point? So many questions, but we'll keep it right here, of course, and we'll keep you apprised of all the developments. And hopefully the whole point of this all will be justice for the Kirk family.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.